Dun 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 dun. What up, everyone? How you doing? And we're here for another episode of the Friday Night Movie Club. That's on Saturday night. Once again, and you can blame this guy right over here. See, I did it right this time. Our good buddy Rob Model is joining us here for another show. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing good. Trying to get through August with this terrible slate of movies.
Yeah, it's not great, and it's not going to get much better throughout the course of the year, which is why I'm really trying to pick and choose what I think could be a winner throughout the course of this year, because with movies getting pulled at the moment, it's just not a whole lot of great content to go off of, and some of the other stuff that we got coming up down the line is not too great. I mean, hell, next week is Blue Beetle, so I mean, that's literally it, unless you guys want to watch Bottoms like next week. So I think you guys would rather take Blue Beetle at this point. But we're here once again to talk about our movie of the night, which is the latest Gal Gadot movie, Heart of Stone, the one that came out on Netflix. And there's a couple of stories there that I want to talk about regarding Gal Gadot before we get started. But let's just introduce our guys who are joining us so far right now. We have Vanya joining us in the chat right now, saying hello, people. Duke Nukem, who I'm assuming is singing a Lil Wayne song. I'm just going to assume that that's Lil Wayne, or maybe not. I don't know. Who cares? It said daylight coming. We want to go home. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I have seen the Meg 2. I think we reviewed it just last week. So if you hadn't caught that episode, go back and watch that one last week. The whole rundown of the Meg 2. Too long, didn't read the version. It's okay, I guess. It was just monster movie Chinese propaganda for the most part. So before we get started here, I want to talk about, we were just talking about baseball right before we jumped on here. And can we take just a moment in time just to laugh at the Mets? And this is a team that coming into this season, everyone thought was going to be World Series caliber. All these players that they had caught up, all of the free agent signings over the last year or so. And now all of a sudden, I believe they're like 10 games back, below 500 at the moment. They're nowhere close to a playoff position. I believe Jason Verlander got traded back to Houston in the last couple of weeks, and it's just been an absolute disaster. They're playing a doubleheader against the Braves right now. They lost the first game 21-3. So it's always terrible when you get your ass kicked in the first half of a doubleheader, then you have to go right back out there again to play a second game because you don't even have any time whatsoever to watch it taste out of your mouth. But it's currently 0-0 at the moment. I think they've lost something like 9 of the last 10. Like, I mean, it's the Mets. Are we surprised that they're just an absolute dumpster fire at this point? Like, shouldn't we expect like the Mets and the Jets to be bad at all times?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been a Braves fan on and off for 25 years. So I mean that and that rivalry in the late 90s, early 2000s was great. Like they met in the world. They met in the playoffs leading up to the World Series. Like one team represented it one year, the next year was the Mets. And look, it's been great, but lately the Braves have just kind of been like, hey, we're the better franchise, we're better consistently run. We get further seemingly almost every year. And I don't know, they've kind of left the Mets in the dust, especially with how much the Mets spent in this offseason, where the Braves have pretty much, for the most part, just done it by smart moves, good contracts, and developing their talent. They definitely have some issues pitching wise, but this season has been really incredible. But it just kind of is the perfect finishing touch on how bad the Mets are and how badly run they are. They sold off at least two of their starting pitchers because they were like, yeah, this is not working, and we're pretty much just abandoning ship at this point.
Yeah, everyone was talking about, oh, the new management. The last management was so bad. We had to get rid of the last management. Things would get better. Then you got rid of them. And apparently, nope. It's just the fact that you guys have been the Mets for the last couple of few decades at this point. I mean, yeah, it's kind of surprising how they even won a World Series in 1984. I don't even know how that happened or whatever year that was when they actually won it. It said those secondary New York teams, it's like you have to really be a true sports fan to support those teams because you have to go into it every year understanding that you're just going to lose and you're just going to suck and you're just going to accept the fact that you're going to lose and you're going to suck moving forward. Meanwhile, the Yankees have 27 championships. The Giants have won like 4 Super Bowls. And it's like there's more successful teams in your own city. You choose to back the losers. I mean, I just don't know how you do that. I don't know, man.
I mean, I think that there's a certain subsection of the New York population that views themselves as not as losers, but they don't like the big empire that the Yankees represent, and so they I guess identify with the Mets perpetually losing. Which again, it's like, does it have to be on such a tragic scale? Like, does it have to be so miserable? And so because it's like the Mets and the Reds, I think the Red Sox fan base used to be the worst in terms of like a miserable group of not that as people, not losers, but losers perpetually as fans of the team. The Cubs won one. So, I mean, it's the Mets are due to break. I mean, they don't have a curse or anything, but they've been perpetual losers for a long time. So it's time to turn it around.
I mean, the city of Cleveland used to be the absolute worst up until LeBron won this championship there a few years ago with the Cavs. But it was like, yeah, you had the Cavs, the Browns, the Indians, who I don't think any of those teams had won anything since like the 40s. And it was just like, yeah, you have to be like a hardcore Cleveland sports fan to support anything going on over there because, like I said, their tradition is losing and suffering, and that's a lot to ask for mainstream sports fans there. But I mean, that's what it is. The Mets still stink, and then we can still laugh at them. So at least there's some enjoyment we can get out of this world at the moment. But outside of that, I know preseason football is back. I gotta be honest with you. This is probably the least interested I've been in the NFL in quite some time. I'm almost at the point right now where I'm debating. I think I might be more excited about basketball than football coming this season. And anyone who knows my feelings about basketball knows that's not a empty statement to make there. But did you feel any kind of excitement? I know you're big Tennessee Titans fans, but is there any like real excitement going on for this season, or are we just kind of going through the motions at the moment?
No, I'm pretty much excited every NFL season. I mean, preseason is whatever. It's just who cares? And it doesn't really matter. But no, I still have a lot of enthusiasm for the NFL. I know that they've made a lot of whatever you want to call them. Like they've made a lot of sort of like symbolic gestures to the corporate world and representational social justice sort of like PR, but for the most part their product's still really good. I know you think it's rigged, which to be fair, there have definitely been some suspicious outcomes, but I still love it. I still get excited for it. It's one of those things that still kind of makes me feel like a kid, I guess, in that way that I feel optimistic about it. And it's just fun. And even if I'm not watching my team, I'm still interested in the league. I'm still interested in, how defenses adjust to everybody having a pretty good quarterback, and it's great because I know the history. I know where the game has been, hopefully where it's going. But, I guess I'm trying to stay as naive as possible. with trying to enjoy professional football before, it changes like everything else, like movies have, like entertainment in general has. Hopefully it's just a slow decline as we go off the cliff.
To be fair, I didn't say that the NFL was fixed. I just said that there is blatant and obvious point shaving that has been much noticeable over the last few years, especially with the all of these betting sites just clawing away at like the NFL. How you have DraftKings and FanDuel and all these other like Bet GMG and all these other betting sites that have just clawed their way into the NFL. Now that you can pretty much bet on anything now, it used to be like a Super Bowl thing, but you can do that pretty much every other show that you watch on television. And here we are. Like I said, some guy just happened to miss 4 extra points in a row in a playoff game where the over under is 45 and a half, and it just so happens to hit 45. So I'm just supposed to look at that and be like, yeah, okay, that's totally legit. So I don't know. Who knows to what degree that these games are rigged anymore. CS Johnson joining us. Say, yeah, you saw the Meg too. Yeah, she was also on that episode last week. So if you want to go check that out as well. But there was one other point that we want to jump into before I got going here, but it actually just slipped my mind right before we were about to talk here. So I'll bring it back up here in a second. But I do want to start off because obviously we're talking about a Gal Gadot movie here tonight, and I want to kind of start this off talking about this whole controversy with Gal Gadot and James Gunn. If you haven't heard, over the last couple of weeks, Gal Gadot, I guess in the lead up to this film that we're going to talk about here tonight, was essentially saying that, hey, I talked to James Gunn and Peter Safran, and we were going to reboot this whole Wonder Woman thing. There's going to be a third movie. It's not going to be a complete reboot. Now, I was told specifically by these two that this was happening, and this is what she said before Warner Brothers had to come out and say, no, this isn't happening. Gal Gadot reaffirmed that she had a meeting with DC Studios James Gunn and Peter Safran, who said that they will be making a third Wonder Woman movie with her in the starring role. Some people tried to say that, well, maybe they told her she was going to be a producer, but it's like, it makes no sense whatsoever to have her be a producer in a movie that she's not starring in. Like, there's no reason why you would do that. But she initially told comicbook.com while promoting the movie that I love portraying Wonder Woman. It's so close and near and dear to my heart. And from what I've heard from James and Peter, we're going to develop a third Wonder Woman movie together. In a new interview, she provided more details of reaffirming that this meeting did in fact happen. She says she was invited to a meeting with James Gunn and Peter Safran. What they told me is that, I'm quoting, "You're in the best hands. We're going to develop Wonder Woman 3 with you. We love you as Wonder Woman, and we got nothing to worry about, so time will tell." So this is her publicly, not once but twice, putting it out there that, hey, look, I had this meeting. They said that we're going to do this, and everything's looking positive to the future. Then at the same day that the second interview came out, this is when Warner Brothers came in and essentially had to say, actually, no, we're not doing any of that. So Warner Brothers came out and a completely confusing twist here saying that, no, we're not doing Wonder Woman 3. We're not doing it with Gal Gadot. This is just a reiteration of what I was saying here. So I want to go to what was yeah, go down here real quick. Okay, here it is. Reaching out to your Variety shortly after the interview, a number of insiders would have informed the outlet that not only was Wonder Woman 3 not in development, but the only project related to the superhero currently in development was Max's female-centric Game of Thrones political drama Paradise Lost. So the insiders also clarified that the studio never made any concrete promises to Gal Gadot returning to reprise her role, and they never had any definitive discussions regarding that matter. So, like I said, after the fact, and this was James Gunn, I think back in like March. This was like earlier this year. It's like, no, we're working on getting Wonder Woman more into animation. I agree that there wasn't enough of her in that area, and that was one of the first things I brought up to the animation folks. So James Gunn was saying back in March that he wanted to do more Wonder Woman animated stuff, but didn't want to do anything with the main character here. So let's talk about this here for a second, because I think when we talk about the kind of the grander scheme here of kind of James Gunn versus everybody at Warner Brothers at the moment, but just based off of face value, who do you tend to believe on this story? Do you believe that Gal Gadot actually had the interview or the talk with James Gunn as she said, or do you believe that James Gunn in this case? There seems to be two people and two camps here when it comes to this whole story. So what do you believe happened based on the comments here?
Well, I would have to sort of qualify it with what we have heard already about his meetings with Dwayne Johnson and Henry Cavill. So we know that he met with all these people. I'm sure he met with Ben Affleck, because his Batman was still one of the better received characters from the DCEU. I'm starting to get the feeling like James Gunn is full of shit,
When we
and
started.
basically lied to these people. And he said,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, keep it quiet while we get things developed, but we're gonna continue with you in these roles. We might reboot the universe, but you're gonna be part of that reboot." And it's like it seems like he went back on what he said. Now, again, there's no way to prove this unless they had representatives there, all that shit. It's like who do you believe? Who do you go with? But again, Warner Brothers has handed it over to James Gunn as I guess it's being rebranded as the DCU.
Yeah.
And whatever, like it's I can't really say anything past that. But it does seem to be a very underhanded way of doing business. And it's just like, why would Gal Gadot come out and say, "Oh, well, we talked and this was a done deal, so I'm looking forward to Wonder Woman 3." It's almost like she's trying to jump the gun to give herself the opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
or basically put Warner Brothers and or James Gunn's feet to the fire to make a decision, and they looks like they just did. So again, I don't know if I'm to believe that Gal Gadot is lying. What does she have to gain by lying?
Yeah.
Other than because again, I don't think she made the calculation that, oh, Warner Brothers is going to panic and agree to do it. That doesn't that doesn't
Yeah,
seem like
that's
a
not
very
her character at all.
so. Yeah, that's kind of where
And
I land on it. It seems like James Gunn is full of shit.
so here's how I feel about like Gal Gadot. I mean, she said a lot of things in the media that I've liked, and she's also said some things that I thought were pretty dumb. But overall, it's like she's one of the actresses in Hollywood I do kind of favor a little bit better, not greatly or anything like that, but for her to come out and say that, yeah, I talked to James Gunn and Peter Safran and we're working on a new movie, I don't see any kind of way while she would just like make that up for her own benefit in order to try to angle Warner Brothers to bringing her back. It doesn't seem like a move that's in her character based on what I've seen from her like in the past. So if I'm to believe what she says is true, because I really don't have any indication that she's the one that's completely full of it, or this narrative going out there that somehow she misunderstood it or there was some miscommunication. I mean, she said that this is directly what they said to me. It's like she wouldn't go out there and make that comment on print unless she knew for certain that this is going to happen. There's something going on here with James Gunn and Peter Safran. And like I said, I think it has a lot to do with James Gunn just being completely full of it. Now, rewind here just a little bit. You have to remember with James Gunn, he had the whole thing with his old tweets come out. It was about like 6 or 7 years ago, where at the time where Trump was running in office, he was the guy always running his mouth about anyone who doesn't believe me is a Nazi and blah, 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 and yada, yada. Then his old tweets came out. People were like, what the hell is going on over here with you and all this stuff about kids? And then he had to lay low for a while, right? That the whole thing is that, oh, Disney fired him, which very much means, they gave him like a 1-year suspension and then brought him back to do the movie that he was going to do anyway. And then all of a sudden now he did like a DC film and now he's just the head of the entire universe. What we're seeing here is a pattern. I've said this before on many other shows here that once is a coincidence, twice is a pattern, and 3 times is an agenda, right? So the story here was that Henry Cavill, who was initially was like, okay, he might not do another Superman movie, made the announcement publicly that, hey, I'm coming back and I'm going to do another Superman film. I can't wait to get ready. Only for him to come out a couple weeks later and be like, no, it turns out I'm not doing another Superman movie. Sorry, guys. And then that whole thing blew up. Then you had the whole situation with The Rock. And this is where the defense of Peter Gunn really got turned up to 11 here, because there was this whole thing about The Rock going to having a meeting with David Zaslav, seeing if there was a way that he can keep the Snyder movies intact so that he can do a movie with him and Henry Cavill as Superman. And the narrative that was pushed out by the publishers like Variety and like these like insider sites was that, oh, The Rock went over people's heads and then he tried to exert his authority and try to position the DCEU around himself. Now, I thought it was very odd that with the way that they were framing that argument, they were saying that, oh, he had the audacity to go over people's head and go straight to David Zaslav. Who would be the one to complain about someone going over his head to talk to the big boss? That would be James Gunn, right? So apparently, The Rock understood that Henry Cavill wasn't going to be a part of this universe anymore, wanted to save Henry Cavill and went to David Zaslav. That upset James Gunn, and as a result of that, the next few months, all of the press regarding The Rock was just completely negative, saying that he ruined Black Adam, which, keep in mind, has done like 10 times better than any of the other DC movies that have come out since then. They even went as far to say that he was the reason why Shazam 2 was a failure, because he was supposed to do a cameo in that movie and he declined. So because of that, that's the reason why that movie bombed. Like, it was like they were really stretching what they possibly could to say that, oh, this is all The Rock's fault here, right? Then you had the whole thing with Ben Affleck. They said Ben Affleck was supposed to direct the Batman movie. He said he was looking forward to directing the Batman movie. Then the next thing you know, he's like, nope, I'm out. I have no interest in doing this whatsoever. That was another turnover from the James Gunn thing. Now you have none of that, none of the Gal Gadot thing. Remember, you had Patty Jenkins not too long ago come out and say that she's not going to be involved in this anymore. Remember, the media narrative around her was that, oh, well, she had a hissy fit and she couldn't keep her ego in check, and that the problem was her, right? So you notice that the way that this is being portrayed in the media, with not just Gal Gadot, but with pretty much everyone who's been cast away in the last year, is that, oh no, they're the problems. They have an ego problem. They don't want to play ball, and it's a good thing that they're now being shunned away, and that James Gunn is now in charge of everything. So I have to sit here and ask this question here. Look, can James Gunn be trusted? Like I said, I still can't understand why they put him in charge of the entire studio moving forward, to now you're in a position where he's doing a Superman movie, he's casting it, he's going to be shooting it soon. And if this movie's a flop, this whole thing, everything you're planning for the next 5 years is going to fall in his face before it even begins. But I mean, are we at the point where is James Gunn right, or is everyone else wrong? Because somebody's lying here, and I am more inclined to trust everyone else in the situation rather than James Gunn. Do you agree? What's kind of your view of this whole situation?
I think it might even be in the pilot of Justified. But Ray Levin says, if you run into an asshole in the morning, you ran into an asshole. If you keep running into an asshole, you're the asshole. You're the constant in this, James Gunn.
Yeah.
You're the constant here. So guess what? When things are constantly going wrong, or there's constant narratives that are clashing, you're going to be seriously, that the scientific reasoning there is you are the culprit. Okay. So I don't know. It's time to start looking at those patterns, especially if Blue Beetle bombs and he does not get off to a good start with his slate of movies. I mean, I don't know. To me, James Gunn is the epitome of a lack of creativity by Warner Brothers. They're saying, we want a known commodity. We want someone that will almost guarantee a box office success with the things he puts out there. We don't want somebody that's going to actually be creative, try to push the envelope, try to do something new or exciting. No, we just want our cookie cutter sort of jokey Marvel banter DCU piece of shit universe. And that's fine. Look, Warner Brothers wants to do that. It's their business. They can do it. They have a board. There's people that make way more money than I do that make up those decisions. But it really is looking like, in this discourse with all of these previous, actors who played these heroes, they have been lied, manipulated, and thrown under the bus in the press. I mean, if there's any kind of deviation from the official James Gunn Warner Brothers narrative, oh, they're a problem. Oh, you don't work with them. There's all this pressure recently. It's like people that aren't easy to work with it's like the new blacklist, apparently. Like, we can talk about like the legitimate claims against Kevin Spacey, but really what happened, just like with Harvey Weinstein, was people decided at a certain point, okay, he's on this list. We're not going to support him. He's not one of us anymore. So it's like, even if those people are guilty of gross and shady shit, which they very, very well may be, it's the creepy way that Hollywood goes about, oh, we don't need you anymore. It's like, the system almost like reveals itself. And in those moments, the whole Me Too thing was like that. It was bullshit. It was ways for people to claim they were victims when they're the ones that perpetuate the system that's abusive.
And there's another aspect of this story which is just puzzling to me because I don't understand why there's such a hard line stance on this issue. But you have people out there who are defending James Gunn on the sole basis that they don't like Zack Snyder and they don't like anything associated with the Zack Snyder universe. So they're rooting for James Gunn. They're all in on James Gunn because they want everything from the Zack Snyder universe removed, right? So they don't want Henry Cavill Superman, Ben Affleck Batman, Gal Gadot Wonder Woman. They want all that gone. So they're defending James Gunn just on the sole basis that they don't like Zack Snyder. But here's the problem here. Like I said, if this was just an issue between James Gunn and Henry Cavill, fine, then let it be that. If it was just an issue between him and The Rock, let it be that. If it was just an issue between him and Ben Affleck, let it be that. If there was just an issue between him and Gal Gadot, but it's like when you have 4 or 5 different major issues all going on at the same time, and the common denominator in every single one of these issues is James Gunn. The problem is telling you straight out that the problem here is James Gunn. And I don't know where all of this faith in James Gunn comes from. And I've said this many times before. I love the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. It's like my top 3 MCU film out of the 36 that they've done so far. But outside of that, I mean, there's a whole lot of other stinkers out there that he's done. Guardians 2 wasn't very good. Brightburn, which was the evil Superman movie that he produced, didn't care for that. Didn't care for the Suicide Squad movie. It was only better than the other one by default because that one wasn't that good either. And then Guardians 3, everyone talked about how emotional that film was. Okay, I guess if you can emote to CGI manipulate animal characters, fine. Maybe that's some emotion there for you, but I didn't see the great movie that everyone else saw there either. It's like, is everyone else seeing something else about James Gunn that I'm simply not seeing here, or like what's even going on here with the situation? Is there just that we hate Zack Snyder so much we're going to defend James Gunn in anything that he does, or that people just will not acknowledge that there's a problem with this guy?
Yeah, I don't know. I do like Zack Snyder, at least some of his work. Some of it I don't. I was never a big fan of 300 or Sucker Punch or some of his other stuff. But I mean, I like his Dawn of the Dead remake. I really liked Watchmen. I liked his DCEU movies, at least the Batman Superman one, Man of Steel. I even liked his Justice League movie. But I get people being fed up with him or just not liking his movies very much or thinking they're dumb.
Yeah.
I really like how much he personally invests in his vision of his movies. But yeah, it was not exactly the best idea for a financially lucrative sort of superhero franchise. And
Yeah.
so I think that's really all that kind of got exposed with him being in charge. And look, at the end of the day, he suffered a family tragedy that he kind of had to go away anyway. So it's like, look, people put too much of themselves in these figures into James Gunn or into Zack Snyder, and it's like they don't represent you. They don't know anything about you. They're
Yeah.
trying to get your butts in seats to see their movie so they can be deemed successful. Okay, it's like the Mickey Mantle speech in A Bronx Tale. It's like, do they put food on your table? Do they provide you and your family with well-being and happiness? Not really. I mean, it's escapism at the end of the day. So it's like that's to me the big problem here is people kind of putting you know James Gunn is not your friend. He doesn't care about you. He's not working to make your life better. So that's always been really weird, bizarre behavior where people identify with the person opposing the person they hate.
Yeah.
It's just like, take a step back and like go outside, please.
There's this another aspect to what you brought up here. It's like, yeah, you still have people who are upset. I don't know why you'd be upset about this, but they were upset that Warner Brothers essentially gave the fans what they wanted and they released the 4-hour Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, right? And it was kind of like this feeling of, well, these toxic fans shouldn't have gotten this because, you're just giving them like a win. So, like, this idea that they released the cut of at least what was supposed to be Zack Snyder's true vision of the film in his full vision of the film, that's like, oh, well, they got one over on us, so now we need to get one over on them. And James Gunn is kind of our weapon to get one back at the people who won like a few years ago. It's like, dude, if you're that deep into this whole little war between Snyder fans, you both need to like kick rocks. Because I mean, look, I'm not a big fan of either one of them. Like, I obviously don't like James Gunn very much at all. And even Zack Snyder. I mean, we talk about the amount of people who went at bat for him to get that film released. And then remember what happened with the Geeks and Gamers thing a few years ago when he did the little charity stream for them, and literally like seconds into the charity stream, he pretty much buried them on their own stream, saying that I'm not associated with these guys whatsoever, even though they were the ones who literally like raised thousands of dollars for a suicide prevention on the stream that he did with them. It was like, hey, look, I'm not associated with this right wing extremism that you guys got going over here. It's like, yeah, he did them fucking dirty as well. So it's like this whole choosing sides between either or. Like, look, it's Hollywood. Don't go too far all in on anyone on that town when it comes to it, because anyone will stab you in the back on a heart notice. That's the nature of the town. That's the nature of the business. So I don't know. This whole thing just seems very scummy to me. But yeah, I don't believe this narrative that everyone who opposes James Gunn is the problem here. Like I said, if there's one common denominator, it's like you're the asshole. It's almost like that cliched stand-up comedian joke where it's like, if everyone has a crazy person in the family, if you don't know who it is, you're the person. It's like that's essentially like what it comes down to. It's like you're the problem here. It's not everybody else. So I mean, like all I have to say here is that obviously Zack Snyder's biggest mistake as far as casting goes was Ezra Miller. And it's funny when you think about it, all the people who James Gunn has thrown over the bus in the last year, Ezra Miller is not one of them. Like they haven't even like truly confirmed whether he's gonna be back or not. So I mean, they could throw a curveball in some instance in the next year. So it'll be like, hey, we're bringing back Ezra Miller as the Flash. Isn't that exciting? It's like, no,
He
not
had
at
the
all.
biggest bomb. You know that Ezra
By
Miller
far.
had the biggest bomb out of all those movies. Maybe Shazam 2, but I think it's because the Flash cost that much money to
Yeah, the
produce.
Shazam 2 didn't have as much of a budget as Flash did.
They were promoting the Flash during the fucking Super Bowl. Let me just put that in context. And you know how expensive airtime is during the Super Bowl. And it's like, so
like
you
$7
realize
million a pop.
how much they lost on that movie, and they're still potentially bringing Ezra Miller back.
Yeah.
What the okay, that's it. He must have something on these people.
Exactly. How do you publicly bury Gal Gadot, The Rock, Henry Cavill, and Ben Affleck, and you say absolutely nothing about Ezra Miller after everything that's gone on with him over the last year and a half? Like, how do you do that? How do you justify that? Like, if there's anyone who probably deserves to be buried publicly, it would be Ezra Miller. And for whatever reason, not only that, they decided that, hey, look, there's too much money invested in this movie. We have to release it. It's like, really, you had to? Because you told us that, Batgirl was such a terrible film that it would damage your brand by releasing it. It seems like, all honesty, you were probably better off just eating the $300 million in production costs rather than spending even more money to market this film, only for it to not make $300 million globally anyway. So it just kind of seems like you wasted your time there. But if that Ezra Miller Flash movie is any indication on the good decision making of Warner Brothers, they're probably going to be screwed over the next few years. I mean, at least they got Barbie to fall back on, so there's that, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's what is it? They're hoping the Meg 2 keeps doing well overseas. And I think they have Blue Beetle coming out. But it's
tracking terribly.
Yeah, good luck, Warner Brothers. It's not looking good.
One more thing before we start on with our movie here. And I know it feels like we've talked about Barbie now for like 4 straight weeks, but as you know, on social media, now maybe it's just people in an echo chamber on social media, but we do have to address this as a possibility here. It seems like that there's more and more steam growing for this Barbie movie to essentially be the big movie of the Academy Awards season next year. There's people talking about giving Greta Gerwig nominations for writer and director, and Ryan Gosling getting him a nomination. And there's going to be a lot of technical awards, I'm sure, too. So buy or sell this idea that Barbie is going to be the movie of next year's Academy Awards.
Sell. Yeah. Look, I don't trust the Academy like I used to, because it's certainly changed a lot, and it doesn't have that sort of pompous air about it that it used to, of like, we're only going to nominate the quote unquote like prestige or important movies. No, now it's just like anything that gets ratings we'll give to, because a lot of people have been nominated and have won for screenplay, either best original screenplay or best adapted screenplay, that have no business being there at all. And I think even Rick would agree with me on that. So anything is possible. I think that Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach will probably get a best original screenplay, if that's what it is, or best adapted. I'm not sure how the rules dictate that.
Mhm.
But Barbie is a summer blockbuster movie, and those don't really get a lot of traction at the Academy Awards. Now, Top Gun, Maverick did. It got nominated for Best Picture. So, I mean, yeah, I
But
think
only
you'll
really
see.
for Best Picture. I mean, they didn't give it for anything else. So it's kind of like an acknowledgement that, I mean, hey, this is a movie that was popular, but they didn't really give it anything else outside of that.
Yeah, and you might see Barbie get a Best Picture nominee. But I think that there are going to be other movies that the Academy either likes better or favors more. And it obviously depends what happens the rest of the year and how successful these movies are. But I'm sorry, I cannot in any good conscience see the Academy literally giving Barbie a Best Picture win over something like Oppenheimer and I know I haven't seen it yet, but Killers of the Flower Moon or even David Fincher's The Killer, which I hear is supposed to be really good. So we'll see. I mean, Hollywood's a joke at this point, so nothing would really surprise me.
Yeah.
And I really shouldn't put that much stock in the Academy Awards anyway, which I said it was over since they had those diversity quotas, which now they're
Yeah.
like, oh, you can bypass those. And I'm like, you guys are like, you're the
Well,
ultimate fucking clown show of, hey, we care about diversity and inclusion and all this shit, but then also we don't really care if you don't really care. And we just want to be all things to all people. So we don't actually mean anything.
yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. You hated Everything Everywhere All at Once, right?
Yeah, that's accurate.
So that was the big winner of last year's Academy Awards. So do you feel like that movie is still better than Barbie?
I mean, it's yes, I would say that it's a better movie than Barbie, if only because it's not based on intellectual property.
Hmm.
But yeah, I wasn't a fan of it. It's kind of that wishy-washy millennial nihilism, like postmodernist, nothing means anything kind of crap.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't like it, but it at least shows some level of creativity and those directors, they did Swiss Army Man. That first movie they did, I thought was really good. So even if I didn't like it, I can still try to appreciate the fact that it came from a place of, trying something new.
Yeah. All I've been saying is that with this film, I feel like the groundwork has already been laid across. Well, like I said, with all the diversity changes and the quotas and stuff like that, that this movie, Barbie, whether you like it or not, is a perfect film to showcase, quote unquote, how diverse and how inclusive and how progressive modern Hollywood has become. So, just based on that and that alone, it would not shock me whatsoever if it did get nominated for multiple Academy Awards, even won a couple Academy Awards, because it feels like Greta Gerwig is now being built up to be like, this is our new top tier female director and screenwriter moving forward now. And it felt like, what was it? Patty Jenkins had that for a while. Then who was the woman who did Zero Dark 30? I can't remember her name.
Catherine Bigelow.
Catherine Bigelow, yeah. So it feels like every couple of years we show off another female director and screenwriter to be like, see, this is the gold standard. And I feel like that now she's being brought up to be that person now, especially with all the projects she has coming up down the road too. So,
Well, like look at Chloe Zhao. You know what I mean?
oh
Like,
God, yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like, so you have people like that who, Nomadland came out in a year. Wasn't that the COVID year or one of the COVID years?
I think
And
that
it's like,
was before the COVID year, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah,
and it's like that's how you strike history. It's like you have no competition, and you get the movie that strikes the right chord at the right time, and it's just like, okay, yeah, you're technically the other woman who won Best Director, but
hmm
you had almost no competition. Whereas, and look, Catherine Bigelow did it in what 2009, where she made a man's war movie. You know what I mean? It wasn't some like feminist articulation of the war. It was Jeremy Renner in that fucking bomb suit,
hmm
trying not to go insane, and then not being able to like reacclimate to his life in America. So he went back,
yep,
so it's
yep.
just like, you want to claim, you want to beat your chest and say, there's only been two women and then you look at the movies that they won for, and it's like, okay, well, there you go. Like, try making a movie that like everybody sits up and pays attention to and says, I'm not going to be able to forget that. That's the kind of movie that Christopher Nolan made with Oppenheimer. And hopefully it gets some recognition. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't, that's not what determines whether a movie's great or not. Awards, so it's not much, it
It's
doesn't
not
mean much at the end
anymore.
of the day. Yeah. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't even know like what like award would even be somewhat prestigious now, because obviously the Academy Awards is too polluted to even like trust that. But it's like, what would be the like the alternative? Because it's not the Independent Spirit Awards anymore. It's like, well, you gotta be some like obscure award no one's ever heard of, like maybe like the Saturn Awards or something like that. I don't know. Like, I honestly have no idea like what even be which award show we would look at to be like, okay, well, this is the new standard now because we tear down all the other standards. It's like,
Well, see, and like see, look, I'm something of a film snob, but I'm not a complete film snob where I would go to Cannes and like I would vote with those people to, you know what I
clap
mean?
for 7 minutes.
They no, because they award some just shit for just being disturbing, like just
Yeah,
for or just being fucked up, and nobody will ever watch that movie again. Like that movie, okay, that movie that the chick who directed Raw did about
yeah,
like the having sex with a car or whatever, like that fucking movie was that won the Palme
yeah.
d'Or, that won Best Picture the year of the Cannes films. It's like you can complain about the Academy Awards, and then you realize in France they're even more fucking
They're
insane
just
when it
complete
comes to
degenerates.
right. So it's just like you can't win no matter where you go or like what you're trying to celebrate. It's like it's all fucking weird, and you can't find your place.
Yeah, that's sadly where we got into here. But let's go ahead and talk about the film of the night, Heart of Stone. Now, I do want to go over one last interview here before we actually talk about the film. And this is something that Gal Gadot talked about a few months before this film came out. And she was kind of rebuking this idea that moviegoers don't want to see movies with women. The story just has to be good, right? So on paper, it sounds like a pretty solid story. So, I mean, a pretty solid rebuke here. So I'll just go to what she said in, was it Vogue Hong Kong? She was asked, how important is it for you to portray these type of roles? What do you hope audiences take away from your performance? She responded, it's funny. I guess I got lucky playing these strong, powerful characters. Heart of Stone was something that I always wanted to do. I always felt like it was a big fan of this genre. I'm a big fan of Mission Impossible and the Bond movies, and never had the opportunity as a girl to watch myself in those. I always was wondering if there was a room for something like that, but female driven. So she went on to say here that I think I got my confidence only after Wonder Woman came out and became a huge success. That is something that really proved to me that people say that men don't want to see women. They do want to see movies with women if the story is good, if the action is there, and if it makes sense, they're all for it. So, like I said, she's not saying anything factually incorrect there. She says that, look, people will go watch it if it's good, if it's quality here. So the idea is that this film that she had coming out here, this Heart of Stone, is something that is going to meet that criteria of being a quality action film. Before we get into whether we agree with that notion or not, I talked a little bit about how I generally feel about Gal Gadot as it's kind of like a person. As an actress, I mean, I haven't really seen anything from her that's overly impressed me from an acting standpoint. I think it's hard for her to kind of do anything without that accent, because the accent is pretty strong, I think, in every single thing that she's done. And she hasn't really made any effort to try to like get rid of that, or at least suppress it in other roles. So that's always been an issue with me too. But let's get your general thoughts on kind of Gal Gadot as an actress and kind of her comments there about the film.
Yeah. I've always liked Gal Gadot for the most part. She has a what I would call she has a star quality, meaning
Mm-hmm.
that she can be very charismatic, but it's almost in that same uniform way that that'll okay that you've seen and you've seen more range from the actors I'm describing, like a Jack Nicholson or
Yeah.
a Tom Cruise, or like you just know them in that role. They're not really becoming the character. They're sort of just you like them enough to believe what they're trying to present to you. And I for the most part, feel that way about Gal Gadot. I have not seen her in the Fast and Furious movies. I saw her in Wonder Woman. She was really bad though in the Death of the Nile movie,
Mm-hmm.
where her accent really does her no favors when she's trying to kind of really express, really emote. It's like, oh, yay. So you see some of the range difficulties there, but she is actually what made me she's actually what made me get into Heart of Stone and find it pretty watchable. Um Now, and what she said, what she said about I agree. It's like I don't think guys care if women are in action movies. It just has to
Mm-hmm.
be believable for the character relatively. You know what I mean? You can't be picking up fucking boulders and like smashing dudes across the screen. Like that kind of stuff, like superheroes, unless it's woven into the story and into the character, it's
Mhm.
just kind of like it's hard to buy that, you
Unless
know?
you actually possess superhuman abilities, then yeah, it's kind of hard to believe that. Oh yeah, she's beating up a guy 3 times her size, or just
Right.
laying it out with her little tiny bony fist. It's like, come on, guys, like, really?
Yeah, like Charlize Theron being a supposed like super agent thing. Like I just don't
Hmm.
really buy that. Like a lot of her like Atomic Blonde.
Yeah.
So yeah, I for the most part, look, I think that that's right. It's just it has to work for what the movie and the story is, and as long as that's there, I think people want to be entertained. They don't want to like poo poo everything. It's just it has to work with the story and the characters.
So this is a Netflix movie, and Netflix is probably my second to. Well, it's in the top two certainly of like least favorite productions that I look forward to. Like if I'm watching a movie and I know that either Netflix or Disney are behind it, like my immediate reaction is just eye roll and sigh, right? Because I've seen so many of these movies now, I can almost predict the formula to a T. Now I did recently watch a Netflix film called "We They Clone Tyrone" with John Boyega and Jamie Foxx. It was actually pretty decent. I can't knock it too much. They actually did a pretty good job with that one. But here's the problem that I see with a lot of these Netflix movies. They have the right idea. Like they have the idea of like, hey, look, we're kind of outside of that major five studio like umbrella here. So we have the ability to be a little bit more creative with our productions versus what Warner Brothers or Disney can do. The problem with Netflix is that their execution is just absolutely abysmal because Netflix is one of the most woke production companies out there, if not the wokest out of them all. I think only Disney will really give them a run for their money at this point. And so the problem is that they'll get a star like Gal Gadot and give her a movie and kind of like frontline her. It's like, okay, well, this at least looks good on paper. But then when you start building the pieces around the film, when it comes to the writers, the directors, the stars, everything else starts to slowly fall apart because in their mind, they're still thinking, oh, diversity, inclusion, blah blah blah. Then we have to find people who have to fit that line of diversity and inclusion, which means that we have to get actors who aren't nearly as trained, who aren't nearly as qualified for the job and what we're expecting them to do in the job. And then the next thing you know, the whole thing just starts like slope down in like a wet cardboard. Like everything just starts to collapse upon itself. And even if you have a good idea on paper, the execution of that idea just seems terrible as a result here. So you have a film called Heart of Stone. And like I said, the idea here is that it's supposed to be sort of like a female-led Mission Impossible film here, right? So you have an MI6 agent played by Gal Gadot, who was just called Stone, Rachel Stone, and they're on a mission in the Alps right off the bat. And it's one of those, like I said, Mission Impossible type of things where it's like, hey, we need to find the contact. We need to get wherever you're getting, or we're trying to like kill him, whatever the case may be. And everyone's talking through comms and they're doing these little like spy things and stuff like that. And I will say this, at least as far as like the opening portion of this film, to me, this was the best portion of the entire movie. I think the setup to this was very, very well with the way they introduced the characters, introduced the team here, kind of like what's going on, like what's being brought out. I think they did a pretty good job at that. And then once they got towards that first was like 20 minutes of like film or whatnot, I feel like it stretched out a little too long and it started to fall apart just a bit. And I'll explain to you exactly why I feel that. But I'll go ahead and get your thoughts of this movie. What did you at least think of the opening act of this film here?
Yeah, I mean, you notice right away that sort of like you were saying, it's sort of like a second tier studio movie. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
very much Mission Impossible, James Bond. This team is heading into this wealthy compound of, you know, industrialists and people that have a lot of money, and they're hacking into the military,
Yeah.
surveillance of like people getting killed and like warfare, and basically betting on it. So I mean, like you're given kind of a lurid front row seat to the world they're infiltrating, and they're secret agents, so that like their lives are at risk and a danger, but it's entertaining and briskly kind of told. So I was actually pretty engaged for the first, I would call it 45 minutes to about an hour of this
Hmm.
movie. But I will agree, I think the opening is pretty well done. Kind of gets you into what the movie's about. But yeah, I think they're there to kidnap the guy who ends up,
taking
not
cyanide.
making it. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like I said,
I
we're
thought
talking
it
about the early part of the movie. We're not spoiling too much here.
right.
So
I think it had a good start. Yep.
yeah, so I mean, obviously, what's his name? Jamie Doran here, who I only know him for those terrible what was it, 50 Shades
50
of
Shades.
Grey
Yep.
like movie. It's just like if you guys know the story of those movies, I think Charlie Hunnam was supposed to play that role at first, then he kind of backed out because he was like doing like the Sons of Anarchy. I think he was actually doing King Arthur too around that time as well. And like even though King Arthur ended up being a piece of crap as well, it's like he still dodged a bullet not having to like to do these movies because I still can't look at him seriously after here. But like I said, you have these British agents who are all working together in spy espionage, and they're at this, I guess, high roller casino, this little like secret casino thing where Gal Gadot, she's playing like the hacker, at least she's presented to be the hacker at this part of the story. And it's like, oh, I need to get in closer to do my hacking skills and whatnot, which she's saying in like a very terrible Israeli accent, even though she's supposed to be British for whatever reason. But
Yeah.
so she's playing a kind of like this double role here where she's playing this typical MI6 agent. She doesn't really have a big importance on the team, at least at first, because the team really is focusing on these two here. Like they're the ones that are frontling it, being like the assassins, being like the trained armed here. But things go south. They try to escape off this giant mountain, and this is where you get the quick twist here that, oh, turns out Gal Gadot is not exactly who she said she was. Turns out she's part of another organization on top of this. Kind of like the secret shadowy organization. What was the name of the organization again? I'm just blanking on the name real quick.
Starts with a C. I'm
The
so
Charter.
sorry.
The Charter.
Charter. Thank you.
Yeah. So she's an MI6 agent, but she's also working for this other secret agency that's also just happens to be looking for the same people that MI6 is looking for. So she's kind of playing a double agent, but not in the sense that she's trying to sabotage MI6. She's basically just using their resources to get to who she really wants to here. And you get a pretty cool sequence here of her going down this mountain, kind of like this lit up what was we going to call this? Parachute, yeah, exactly. Down on the film here, like I said, you can definitely tell that there's inspiration here from Mission Impossible because this seems like this is something that Tom Cruise would do, except for he would do it for real, not do like CGI and like blue screen or whatnot. But this part is pretty good, and this is where you start to realize that there's more to Gal's character here upright than the film's kind of like letting on here, because you realize, oh yeah, she's actually a very trained and skilled agent, a very trained and skilled assassin. On top of that, she goes down there and she kills kind of like the attack team, but not in a way where it's like, oh my god, it's like, oh, it's just like another woman trying to beat up guys like 3 times their size. I do respect the fact that they did try to make it somewhat creative and not insulting that this tiny, like, I wouldn't say that she's a tiny woman. She's not. She's a tall woman, but it's like her frame is like really small. So she's like, she comes out where she has like good size, like vertically, but not so much horizontally. So
yeah.
But how would you grade her? Kind of just like I said, trying to present her here as like an action star. So how would you grade Gal Gadot's action prowess in the film?
Yeah, I mean, I just to say that the parachuting scene,
Yeah,
it's the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, look, I would not choose to shoot that way. I would want to give the audience more bang for their buck, and I wish Netflix actually spent the money to do things like that. Because it's like there's maybe a scene towards the end with a big explosion of a building where you're like, oh, that's where they spent their money. You know what I mean? If this cost 80 million, 100 million, I don't know what the budget to this was, but it's like, but having said that, I will say the parachute scene is still very watchable. It's still entertaining. It's visually interesting, even though it's using CGI and green screen, where you kind of buy it. It would be cool to see Gal Gadot actually doing the stunt. But it's not that kind of production. So having said all of that, I still think it's relatively well done. And it's an exciting scene, and it's a good it's something that's good to open up the movie with.
I was just about to say the same thing. It's a good introduction if you're trying to get people who clearly have no idea like what this film is and what kind of the game. It's a great scene to kind of introduce people to the film that you're setting up here. Now, you set up a very interesting plot point here. Like I said, you have Gel essentially being on two different teams simultaneously, but you don't really know exactly like what her role is with this other organization because when the turn happens in the very beginning of the movie, you think to yourself, "Oh, okay, so she's the villain here. Like, is she like, is she like actually the bad guy of this whole scenario?" But they don't portray her to be the bad guy. She's just working for like this other organization, which I thought was a kind of interesting route they would go there because I think it would have been a little bit more interesting had she had been kind of like an evil spy because I think everyone's kind of expecting her to be like the protagonist of the movie here. But if you do a twist right away to be like, "Oh, actually, she's kind of the villain of this story," and people have to kind of like work their way around to her, I think that would have made the film a little bit more interesting just on that aspect there alone. But instead of
Yeah.
going that route, I do like how like right at the end of the whole chase of the Alps, where it was like, "Oh yeah, we have to go back up the mountain and get Stone," because their whole team thinks that she's still up the mountain, and then they're showing us like that you have basically no chance of like getting back up there. So it's like, "Yeah, you got any ideas of how we're gonna make it back up there?" And it's like they just cut to the next scene. It's like they don't even bother to explain how she rendezvoused back with the team afterwards. It's like, we'll just leave that to the audience's imagination because we don't nearly have the money or the budget to do that. But I feel like with a lot of these like Netflix movies, by the way, it's like I think it was like The Gray Man too. Like that had like a $200 million production budget. I don't think this one had nearly as much as that one did, but Netflix has shown that they will throw an excessive amounts of money at production wise, but it feels like the money that 200 million goes to is to like the actors because outside of Gal Gadot, I guess you can make an argument maybe Jamie in the well too. A lot of these other actors that are in this film are not well known like at all. It seems like they probably spend a lot of money on Gal Gadot and really nothing else because a lot of the action aspects is not really straight hand-to-hand combat like you saw with like Extraction 2 where they put a little bit more work on the stunt choreography and like the action setup here. A lot of it was kind of like done like behind the computer for the most part, so unless that was kind of like the raising cost here. But like I said, for the most part it looks like it was kind of a straightforward mid-budget movie, but because Netflix doesn't release those financials, I guess we'll never know at the end of the day exactly how much they spent here. But this is where we get the MacGuffin here of the movie, which is called I want to make sure that I get this right here too on my notes.
The
So
heart.
this is the heart, yeah, the heart.
Yeah.
So it's essentially this is one of those like government spy things that you see in every other movie, saying that we can basically hack into any surveillance and control anything in the world with this one little thing that we have up here, and of course it's all controlled by like, a satellite that's up in space. So unless you can get up into space, there's no way you can hack into the satellite until somebody actually does it, and you realize, oh yeah, this thing's not nearly as secure as we thought that it was. I don't know why we didn't possibly see that coming, but this is just basically the introduction of like this is the thing that's going to bring down not only just the agency but everyone around us here. So you start to get a little bit of, I guess, an introduction into Gal and her relationship with this team, because you think that the first 30 minutes of this film, this is going to be like her working with all these other people. They're going to be like doing missions and stuff like that. And it very abruptly ends right away. I won't give away exactly what happens here, but there was this one scene, which I'm pretty sure you know too, where they're all in kind of like, I guess, like this hotel or something like that. And they're all just chilling and having a good time. And I think somebody starts singing like Lizzo. And almost immediately when I heard the song, I was like, oh my God, please somebody shoot from a window. Like you could take 3 of these people out in one, that'd be great. The next thing you know, like somebody throws a grenade in there. I was like, oh, thank God. Now I have to listen to this song here. But without spoiling the twist here, what did you think of kind of like this sequence here in the film? Do you think that was a good decision to kind of change up what had already been presented as the first 40 minutes of the movie? Now, I think this is where you said this is where you kind of turned on the film a little bit. So do you think this was the right decision to make here? What was kind of your general feelings on it?
Well, I was still invested at this point because the reason I found myself invested was because Gal
Yeah.
Gadot's character is conflicted. She is keeping a secret from her MI6 team, who she very clearly shows she cares about. She actually
Mm-hmm.
cares. They've developed a relationship, which some of the relationship building stuff was tacky and not funny and kind of lame, but whatever. It's like, I get why it's there. It's to sort of build up a rapport that she feels like I'm keeping a secret from these people, and I care about them, and I'm potentially putting them in danger. And it's said later by her shit by her crap by her other boss, by her real boss, how basically
Yeah.
she blows her cover to basically try to save her MI6 team. And it's just like, because they talk about this secret intelligence organization like, oh, they're the altruistic ones that are gonna use all the power, basically the heart for good. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
they even say this, like, it would be ridiculously naive for you to believe that that is even possible. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I actually thought that gave me a reason to care about Gal Gadot's character, and even you know by connection the other team members, even if they're not exactly that well fleshed out as characters, because they're connected to her, that that sort of atmosphere is created.
Yeah.
um and so I would say that, like, when the whatever the SEAL team or the special
Mhm.
ops team breaks in, I was still pretty invested in the story at the time.
So, where do you think was the fall off point with you? Because this is where I think the fall off point was. It's that right after this scene here, where they're talking, where they manage to escape, and I think like all their secrets are finally revealed here. This is kind of the problem that I have with films like this, and Netflix has been guilty of this a lot. Is
Mhm.
that they'll spend all their money on one star because they figure, okay, that's going to be the draw to get clicks on whatever streaming service it is. But as we've shown, like Gal Gadot is not the strongest actress out there, so I don't think she's really the right fit for someone to like essentially put her in charge of carrying the entire movie on her talents whatsoever. Like you have to essentially have somebody there who's a strong enough co-star, so that way they can pick up a lot of the slack just in case she's not able to carry the entire load herself. But they don't really do that here in this movie. Like I said, everyone else is relatively unknown, and what happens here is that when you get to a point where there is a twist, where there is kind of like a breaking off point, and Gal no longer has her team. So in the course of this, you get a new character who's introduced called Kenya, who is a British actress here named Ollie Bott, who's like a British Indian actress here, and her acting is even worse than Gal Gadot's in the movie too. And whenever the movie basically shifts gears to focus more on her character and her conflict, that's where the quality of the film just slowly starts to deteriorate here. So go ahead. What do you think of this actress, and what was kind of, do you feel the same way that I feel about the kind of the pool here? Was this where the film started to lose you as well?
Yeah, yeah. You mean the actress who spontaneously would go from a regular English accent to a fucking Indian accent so thick you thought she was working in a 7-Eleven? I mean,
Oh
like,
yeah.
holy shit, dude. That like, my mom watched this with me today, and we just kept
Hmm.
looking at each other like, I cannot, like, I'm starting to affect the accent myself, because so bad. It's so fucking bad. Yeah. She
Hmm.
she absolutely brings this movie down. And she's,
Yep.
she's needed to sort of like, to be basically to be the reason the villain almost succeeds at the end. But
Hmm.
I will say this too, with Gal Gadot losing her team and two of the members getting killed. Look, I want to, like, honestly say, a Netflix movie that actually has stakes, even if it's a dumb spy thriller action movie, I will say I appreciated that. I appreciated throughout the movie that people actually died, that there was an impact to the decisions that the characters made. So there's at least that, that's what I can say. Like, by this point, I'm usually like, I can't wait for these movies to be over. And this one kept me watching, all the way to the end, still being relatively invested. And I can say I actually liked Gal Gadot's performance. Now, maybe it's because I think she's really attractive. Full
Hmm.
disclosure, that's probably my bias there.
Uh,
But
she's
I
not
I
an ugly woman.
genuinely believed, like, her character for the most part. Like, I bought into what she was feeling, what she was going through, the fact that she is vulnerable. That's the other thing too. She's a woman who, yes, is a secret agent, but is in vulnerable positions many times. Like when she's poisoned, when she has to, has to be taken to the hospital, and is recouped by her intelligence team. Like, so I thought some of those things, make the difference sort of in the end. But yes, the inclusion of the British Indian terrible, like, representational, like, casting was
Yeah.
just a little too much. Like, just get a competent actress next time to, so that they're not so annoying and drag the movie down.
So this is what annoyed me about Extraction 2. Like I said, Netflix has done this for years. They'll get a big star and front load them on the film, and they think that, oh, if we get these other actors who are not well known, who are not big stars, we can use this person's star power to bring this person up. It's like kind of like the pro wrestling concept of giving somebody the rub. It's like, oh, you're in a match tonight against Hulk Hogan, brother. You're going to be a star thanks to this. It's like, no, that's not exactly how it works here, especially like in movies. And that kind of annoyed me with Extraction 2, how they used Chris Hemsworth to kind of like build up these other two characters who you really didn't care that much about at all for the most part. Like really the focus should have been him, but it was like, no, we have to try to build these other characters up because maybe we can put these other characters in the spinoff movie in the near future. It's like you guys are counting your chickens way before they hatch, and it's clearly showing here. Now, there's another little rant that I need to go on here too, because for some weird reason, just like halfway during the movie, Glenn Close and who's this other guy, BD Wong, just shows up in the middle of the film for kind of no reason, like whatsoever. And I just thought to myself, it's like, as I'm watching the scene, I was like, why are these people in the movie? Like, it feels like BD Wong is just in every single movie, like ever. Like he just like does like a day's worth of like every single film that's in like production, because it's like, he'll just randomly show up and give like exposition for like no reason whatsoever. But the Glenn Close thing just seemed very, very odd to me. This seems like they're trying to build up for, like I said, another movie. Like, I guess they were thinking in their mind, oh, well, this is clearly going to get a sequel at some point, so we'll build up this angle here with Glenn Close for a movie that we won't be seeing for another 4 or 5 years. Like, I don't know why they thought that this is the route to go on here, but what was your thoughts, just their inclusion here of the film? Like, was this needed at all?
Yeah, I've seen BD Wong in quite a few things. I mean, I've watched so much of Law and Order SVU and Oz, where he plays the priest at the prison. And I generally liked a lot of the things he's in, but you're right, he's just a perpetual like familiar face now. I think he was in all of the Jurassic World movies because of he was in the original Jurassic Park. So he's a guy that's made a lot of money over the years, just kind of being a familiar face, but he didn't need to be here. It's not much of a character. Glenn Close, I was like, that's Glenn Close, right? Just randomly in this Netflix movie. Okay. And she's like I don't know if the current or the former head of the CIA. But the whole point was that she's part of this secret organization that Gal Gadot is also a part of. And she's like, she had a title even like Queen of Hearts, or maybe that's what Gal Gadot was, Queen of Hearts. I forget all the little like monikers they were kind of giving each other, but there's not much substance to sort of like keep it afloat. And you're just like, okay, whatever. I'm going to accept this because I'm trying to get through this movie now. So, yeah, but you're right. They're literally there to simply, well, we know why. They're literally be taken out later.
Know why.
Yeah, so they're plot devices, yes.
So this is the part of the film which to me reminded me. You ever played Sonic the Hedgehog 2?
Yeah.
Remember the second to the last level, which is the one right before the death egg? I think it's like the Sky Fortress level, where they're basically going up like into the edge of space. So the whole point here is that the control for this machine that everyone in the government is using is a satellite up into space. So they have to find a way to get up into the satellite, up into space, to destroy the thing, or at least to sabotage it, whatever the case may be. And this is quite literally like what they do at one point. So you have Gal Gadot on this giant exploding, I guess I don't want to call it like a blimp or anything like that, even though it's basically shaped exactly like a blimp.
It's like a Zeppelin. Yeah.
Remember
because they were like, don't smoke in here because you're gonna fucking blow us up.
Yeah,
made of hydrogen.
Yeah. I remember that. Yep. So here we are, and then this is the part that I just found absolutely hilarious. So Hollywood, I don't know if they're like intentionally trying to mislead people to how explosions work, but at some point of this whole thing, the thing blows up. But it's not like how it would blow up in real life. In real life, this thing will blow up in like an instant, right? It will just be like boom, like we've seen how the Hindenburg went down. That's all I'm saying, right? But in Hollywood, it always has to be like this slow motion. Oh, the ship is blowing up. Let me run in slow motion and get off of the ship like an action hero killer. Even though, like, no, you be dead. Like you would just be absolutely eviscerated like at this point. But this is part when you also start to see the kind of the limitations here in the budget when they start doing things that they're not quite capable of, because they're all supposed to be like on this ship that's like thousands of feet in the air. Like this is where you can really start seeing like the blue screen in effect here. It's like, look, if you don't have the means and the funds to make this look at least somewhat passable, then just don't do it. Like don't overshoot your means. Like if you only have like a budget of like $100,000, don't try to do anything that's in space. Try to keep it as real as humanly possible here. But what was your thoughts on the blimp sequence here?
It's pretty ridiculous. Like the way the Gal Gadot gets up there and then stays on top and then unlocks the latch seal and get it's like, okay, we get it. It's supposed to be like Batman, super agent James Bond shit. So, and then what's even worse is when it's starting to blow up and her like slow run,
Yeah,
her slow run off the fucking blimp is
it's
just like, okay,
you
man,
would
come
be
on.
so dead. Like
Yeah.
you would be dead before you even had a chance to turn around. And then like I said, this whole thing's inspired off of Mission Impossible. So it's like, hey, remember the helo jump from the last Mission Impossible movie? What if we did our own version of that, but worse? It's like people don't understand the reason why the helo jump in what was it, Fallout, was actually like really cool is because he actually jumped out of the plane in real life. Like that he did that shot I think like 30 something times to get
Yeah.
the full sequence of like what it looked like. So that's why the scene looked great, because he actually like did it. When you don't put in the same effort that he did into your thing, it just looks like a cheap knockoff by comparison. So it's like, look, I get it that you guys are inspired by better movies, but if you can't replicate what they're doing, then like just don't do it. Like that's
Well,
all I
and
have
it's
to say
so
there.
awkward. It's so awkward the free fall when she's just
Mm-hmm.
free falling, and it's like, are you gonna cut soon? Because this is just fucking awkward.
Yeah.
For net. Listen, this is what's so weird about this movie. Like, it's okay. There's a scene much earlier when she's like, oh, I got car sick, and then the girl up front's like, oh, you can move up here to my seat, and then immediately after this, they have to abruptly stop for comedic effect, and then
Yeah.
it cuts the next second to them pulling in and stopping, and it's like, why the fuck did you have that scene in there? That it's
Yeah.
shit like that annoys me. That it's like there are the bones of a decent watchable action movie here, but they drag it down with that kind of fucking nonsense. So the awkward free fall until she meets what's her face, right? What's her face
Mm-hmm.
with the parachute, and then
Oh
like
yeah.
knocks her out, and the fighting's like, get away from me. It's like, it's really, is that what you're gonna say in like a death defying like struggle?
I did find this scene unironically hilarious, because you're just
Yeah,
watching two actresses who combined can't even put together a halfway decent American accent.
yeah.
Basically, like speaking like in the film, I was like, okay, now look, I understand you have like one forward speaker person, but having two of them and they say like both of you guys are terrible at your accents. Like, stop trying to sound like anything that you're not if you're not good at it. Like at
So
this
bad.
point, right? So I don't even remember why they were in the Senegal in the first place, but I think at one point here they end up in the desert together, and this is just the quality of the blue screen here that they chose for this film. I was like, guys, like you guys have to figure out how outlining works, because this is just not great when you you don't have the, like I said, don't do things you guys can't do. I mean, you figure that if you're doing a film like this, like all you have to do is like drive out to like the Arizona desert and then film a scene that looks halfway better than this. It's like if you can't actually go to the country that you're claiming to be at, just find something at least close enough to it that people don't question it. You know what I mean? Like I think there was like a film earlier this year that was set in like Afghanistan or something like that. You thought that, oh yeah, it actually looks like Afghanistan. It turns out it was like Jordan or like something like it's significantly opposite to that. It's like, oh yeah, well you guys made it look a lot better based on that here. But the whole idea here is that now that these two are like forced to work together because she doesn't like have her team like anymore. Like I said, Gal Gadot's a very attractive lady, so I mean, if the content of the story here isn't enough to keep you going, I mean, they'll at least drag you on to at least the ending
Okay,
portion
do you
of this
know
film.
this segment? I don't know where they were. I think it was Morocco or something. But like the
Yeah,
scene where she's running off the cliff into the like to the water, and like then she washes ashore with like the big cut on her head, and like
yeah,
what, like that thing, like that was to me like where you could have cut that. You could have just cut that part of the movie out. Like
yeah.
we didn't need that. So the movie's, I don't want to say it's overly long. I think it's mostly fine in terms of its runtime, but you could have cut 15, 20 minutes out of it where, We're not
I
waiting for it
think
to be
so
over.
too, and I think the problem here is that Netflix, with a lot of these movies, they think to themselves, "Well, this is such a big production here that we have to have like a big runtime to justify like the budget." But it's like this is honestly a movie that if you had kept it about 100 minutes, probably would have came off a lot better. Like this didn't need to be a 2 hour movie like at all. And I don't know what is it with Hollywood, whether they're just bad at editing films or they just don't believe in shortening the picture of a lot of these movies. It's like you don't have to do 2 hour, 2.5 plus hour movies like every single shot. Like you can cut it down just a little bit here.
I feel like at some point though, Netflix is they're so data obsessed that they're just
Hmm.
like, yeah, we like those good round even numbers, you know, or
Yeah,
or just whole numbers, you know what I mean? So they're like, yeah, we prefer someone watch a movie for 2 hours and not an hour and a half, because then we have to find something else to get to that 2 hour mark that they're watching. And it's like, yeah, but that means you don't believe in the content that you're putting out there. So,
yeah.
but
So at this point, this is when Jamie here returns to the film after being gone for like an hour because he had this like big twist here, like I think at the 40-minute mark of the film, then he just disappears for a while. Then you have to like remember, oh yeah, he is the bad guy, kind of sort of in this movie. But he's just, I guess he's kind of hates both sides and just wants to like tear down whatever system that they use here. And of course, because the agency is like, no, if you tear this down, then we're gonna be ruined. So we have to save us. And it's like, well, I mean, you guys are kind of dicks too. So I mean, they get to the point here where I think Gal Gadot gets attacked, and the comms at the what the name of this place? I keep
the
forgetting it.
heart,
The
the
charter,
charter,
the
yeah.
place gets sabotaged. So it's like, oh no, we only have like an hour full of like oxygen left, and we need to do something, or we're all gonna die. It's like you need to save us. I almost want to say that Star Fox thing. It's like we need your help, like that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
with Gal Gadot. So that's essentially what the film comes down to now, where it's like we need you to stop Jamie and essentially save our air supply before we all die, because we're still the good guys here, even though we're dealing with international espionage, which I always kind of find weird too, and not just kind of like a CIA perspective of all the intelligence agencies in every movie is always portrayed as like the good guy, who are like the real heroes that are just out to save everyone, where the real intelligence agencies not so much. That's all I have to say there. But before we get to kind of the ending portion here of the film, what did you think of kind of the I guess the later portrayal of the charter here? And so who's the girl who plays the black woman, the one who's in the head of everything? It's like Sophie Akinodo or something like that. It's like a real weird British African name here, but she's
Mhm.
kind of like portrayed as like the head of like this organization, and that's kind of where you kind of see like the diversity and inclusion seeping in a little bit there. It's like the head of this super secret good organization, of course, has to be a black British woman, which is like, of course.
Well, I mean, I actually thought she gave a good performance. I thought she actually gave some in terms of conflict with Gal
Hmm.
Gadot's character. I thought that was that provided something at least, but
Yeah.
no, look, I the idea that the intelligence agency, there are, altruistic intelligence agencies that only want what's good for mankind. It's just like
Hmm.
we can all laugh at that. We can all just kind of we get it. It's a movie. And Gal Gadot is the golden hearted, intelligence agent who's trying to do the right thing. She's trying to stop Jamie Dornan. She's trying to understand the machinations of her own organization, which
Yeah.
they don't really go into that. Of course, they don't really go into the fact that, you know, all look in a real world setting and understanding of espionage, all these people are bad, okay, from a classical moral standpoint, okay.
Hmm.
But yes, it's Gal Gadot's given the reason for us to care because her team's wiped out. Jamie Dornan basically gives her a direct reason to want to kill him. You know what I mean? So it's, I can buy it. At least I can at least get on that level, even if there's lots of flaws, lots of issues. The movie looks like crap. The CGI is garbage. Constant hologram like shit with like the heart and being able to control like, basically all of
It's basically a
civilization.
guy in front of a blue screen going like this, make it seem like he's
Yeah,
like actually doing
it's
stuff. It's like,
it's Skynet. It's the same Skynet fucking AI shit that we've been
mhm.
talking about for 30 years. So almost 40 years now. But so I mean, I kind of gave it a pass, ultimately a passing grade, because I think it's watchable and it's entertaining for 2 hours. It doesn't mean it's not doesn't have its issues, or it couldn't have been better, because it certainly could have. But yeah, I mostly gave it a passing grade. I wasn't too hard on it.
Yeah, so once a here, like I said, the whole her whole character I thought brought this movie down entirely. Like once we
Yeah.
figured out exactly who she was, and they tried to like frame her as kind of like the I guess misunderstood good guy in this whole scenario. It was like if you're going to do that, you might as well just kept the original team from the first half of the movie because at least she had something there with them rather than getting rid of them and inserting her. I think that was probably the biggest creative mistake here in this film, but it gets to a point where it's like, yeah, it's Gal Gadot versus Jamie the douche, as I was just like to call him here. And I guess we all know who is going to end up winning this one here at the end. So I guess we can go ahead and give to the final thoughts of the movie here, just in general. I think I'll start off with you because I'm kind of on the fence about a lot of aspects of this film. Like I said, I think that there is a better movie to be had here, and I can feel more for a film that has something there, even if the execution isn't good. Because it's like, well, if you just change one or two things here, you could have had a much better movie rather than something that's like you just wasted my time for like 2 hours in this entire thing, and now I'm like upset. Like if I could actually see kind of where a movie could have had a much better spin, I can give it a little bit more benefit of the doubt than a movie that's just absolute dreck. But basically just give your final thoughts here, what you felt about the movie, and I'll go ahead and give my rating too. But what do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, look, for whatever, for what this is, basically like a studio action blockbuster with a spy thriller element. Look, it didn't annoy me the way a lot of modern movies do.
Yeah.
I felt like it was relatively to the point. I thought that it gave a reason for us to care about Gal Gadot's character. The conflict that she feels, the sort of you know, that 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 issue, internally, where she's debating whether she's doing the right thing, whether she should take care of her MI6 team, versus her. I can never remember that goddamn the term for the other team, for the intelligence agency. But basically, it's very watchable for 2 hours. And yeah, it's got issues like any other kind of like movie of its type, but I mostly enjoyed myself. I think Gal Gadot does a decent job. The movie doesn't ask too much of her, but again, it's just something that's watchable for 2 hours. I landed at a 2.5 out of 5. Because again, I thought it had enough there to sort of keep your attention and keep you interested, but there's just also a lot of issues. Yes, the British Indian chick was so fucking annoying that it really brought it down. I was probably going to give it a 3 without her
Yeah.
kind of dragging it down, but it is what it is. And so it's just like I would say, it's worth checking out just if you want to like a popcorn movie on a Saturday night, but not much more than that.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way that you did. I will say this: I think the first half of this movie is far stronger than the second half of this movie. I think the first half is actually pretty good. I like I said, a lot of the sequences there. I kind of like what they were building in the first half. I think just that whole switch halfway in the movie kind of like ruined a lot of things. Well, ruined a lot of the goodwill that the film had up to that point. So I think it would just come down to like one creative decision kind of knocking down the film overall for me. But like I said, there is good to this film. Like the first 30 minutes, I think is pretty solid. And if you can find a way to ride it out through there, you might like it a little bit better than I did when it's all said and done. But I just thought there was a few too many creative issues to give it too big of a grade. So I think I'll go just a little bit lower than you. I'll give it like a 2 out of 5. Like for me, like I said, it's not the worst movie out there. There is something to it, but I don't think it's connected well enough to give it like at least a solid 2.5 or 3 out of 5 movie for me. So this is just a solid 2 out of 5 movie. So like I said, not the best, but I mean some people might like it a little bit better than others. But I will say this: like I know like the Rotten Tomatoes score was pretty bad on this one, and a lot of people say, "Oh, this is awful." It's like it's not really awful. I think they just kind of lose the interest of the audience as the film goes on here. I think that's pretty much like the biggest flaw of this movie. So That's what I'm gonna go ahead and give it out there too. So Henry joining us here saying hail. What's up there, Henry? But yeah, that's kind of our rundown of Heart of Stone. So I mean, I guess you can thank me for not making you watch like Gran Turismo or that other terrible movie that's out right now, which I won't even name. But there's definitely worse films to pick than this one. Unfortunately, next week I don't think we're gonna have that luxury because the only real big movie coming out next week is in fact Blue Beetle. So next week we'll be reviewing Blue Beetle, the latest DC flop that I'm pretty sure is gonna be great. But hey, at least George Lopez is in the movie, so that should be a good thing, right?
No, probably not.
I figured as much too, but yeah. So that's what we got coming up next week. I'm gonna go ahead and give you the floor here. Promote anything you want to promote before letting you know what we got coming up on the show afterwards. So, anything you want to invest to the people? Did you finally post that Oppenheimer review you've been talking about for 3 weeks?
Yeah, no, I posted it. Got to do a better job of promoting it probably, but yeah, and yeah, I'm just continuing to watch movies as I always do. I talk about them on Twitter. I don't know what the hell's going on with Twitter lately because it seems like since Elon Musk rolled out that subscription bullshit where
Yeah.
people, get rewarded for their impressions, seems like a lot of normies are getting throttled really, really badly. I mean, I have an issue with that anyway because the whole like, are you sure you want to say that? Because most users don't like that. Apparently, that's a soft shadow ban anyway. So who knows? Since he hired that CEO, it's just been a fucking mess. So we'll see. Twitter probably is, unless something changes, it's probably just going to be like this going forward. But I talk about movies, and you can check out my Twitter.
Yeah, no, I think I feel like Twitter is starting to morph into a home for like meme accounts. Because really, if you're like a meme account on Twitter, like there's like a lot of opportunity now to just make a crap ton of money just by
Hmm.
posting basically for shit posting. That's essentially what it is. You're getting paid to shit post. And I know quite a few people who are being paid a lot of money right now just to shit post on Twitter. So if you try to have any kind of commentary or any kind, if you basically try to pretend like Twitter is the same Twitter from like 10 years ago, you're gonna have a rough time on what it is now. Now that it's just called X. So,
Yeah.
um, but what we got coming up here, so I know I got a lot of content coming out for Zinger over the next few weeks, so keep an eye on that. I'm working on a couple of stories for Bounding right now. Cindy Sweetie is the one that I'm working on, and I'm going to talk about the whole James Gunn DC debacle in detail, so you can look out for that as well. So a lot of written content is going to be coming out here in the next few days. We're still going to be clipping up some of our streams here. We're putting it on the YouTube channel the next couple of days too. There's going to be some cutouts from this show as well. Monday night is a show that I'm really looking forward to. We're doing episode 5 of the Bible Lens podcast. And the first couple of episodes were kind of like our introductory phase, kind of like phasing things out, like with obviously the new cast of people that we got going on there. But now we're going to start talking about some really heavy issues. And Monday night, we're going to be talking about who I believe is the Antichrist and the false prophet that has been biblically warned about in the Bible. And is it the Mahdi? Is it the Muslim Jesus? We'll talk about in great detail on Monday night using both biblical and Islamic sources. And I think people who may be on the fence of whose side to choose may have their eyes opened in a way that they probably never thought of before once we do the show. And it's going to be a series because we're going to be doing one this week and another very interesting one the week afterwards as well. So it's going to get very interesting on Monday night. So definitely check us out then. Tuesday night, I believe we're doing episode 61 of the Barroom Podcast. I think we did 60 this week, if I'm not mistaken. So episode 61 of the Barroom Podcast will be coming out on Tuesday. And then Friday night, we should be back doing the Friday night movie show, unless you might have to work again or have to show things around here. But I'm keeping it hold on Friday night for now. But we'll be reviewing the latest Warner Brothers film, Blue Beetle, next week here on the show. So give a quick little shout out for everyone who joined us here: Vanya, Duke Nukem, C.S. Johnson, JEC. Henry Tung, who also joined us here as well. Liberty Watcher, the Antichrist is among us. Yeah, you definitely want to tune in for our show on Monday. Like I said, we might blow your mind with who we believe that it is. Nope, it's not Obama. I can tell you that much. And no, it is not the Pope. Even though we will be talking about that on a future show, I don't think it's the Pope either. But you like I said, join us on Monday night. We might blow your minds there. But until then, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you guys for joining us on a Saturday night here. Go ahead and hit our outro. We will see you guys later. Goodbye. Adios. Hopefully, we'll see you Monday. Later, people.
It's over. Go home.
Get the hell out! Get out! Get out! Get out!
Okay.
Get out! Get out! You get